If you're farming aluminum or duraluminum, whether you just hit tier 4 or you're deep into the endgame, you're going to need a ton of it. It's used to craft gear, but it's also what you need to build advanced deathstills and large windtraps, which are going to be your main source of water in the endgame. This entire farm is built around using the buggy. It's faster, skips the Cutteray minigame, and pulls way more resources per node than the handheld version. You definitely want to be using it over the regular Cutteray whenever you can. Before you get started, make sure you've unlocked 2 important skills under the planetologist tree. First is vehicle mining, found under the mechanic branch. It boosts your yield up to 20% when you're using vehicle mounted tools like the buggy's Cutteray. You'll also want the Cutteray mining skill from the scientist branch, which adds another 20% to all Cutterays, including the one on your buggy. Both skills scale as you rank them up, starting at 10% at rank 1, then 15% at rank 2, and up to 20% at rank 3. So you're going to want to progress at least that far into the planetologist questline. Next, let's talk about the actual buggy Cutteray. To mine aluminum, you'll need at least a Mark IV Cutteray on your buggy. And to mine duraluminum, you'll need a Mark V. So if you're just entering the aluminum tier, start by using a Mark III Cutteray to gather enough aluminum to craft a Mark IV for your buggy. Same deal when you reach duraluminum. Use a Mark IV handheld just long enough to farm what you need for a Mark V buggy Cutteray. It's absolutely worth the upgrade. The buggy version gives you a huge jump in yield over the handheld, and it's just overall faster. If you want to take it a step further, keep an eye out for the Focus Buggy Cutteray variants. These unique variants perform like the next tier up. So something like a Focus Mark V is basically equal to a regular Mark VI, and so on. I'll leave links in the description with details on where you can find the Focus Buggy Cutterays for Marks 4, 5, and 6. You can farm them from chests in Hogga Basin or in the deep desert, and some can also be purchased from specific vendors. In the case of the Mark VI, it's available through the Landsrat vehicle vendor if you won the vote and selected vehicle favor that week. And of course, you can always check the player auction to see if anyone is selling one. Either way, it's absolutely worth getting the best Cutteray you can get your hands on. The upgrade in yield is massive. Here's a quick breakdown of the base aluminum and jasmium yields for each tier of buggy Cutteray, which you'll need for aluminum and duraluminum. One other thing worth upgrading, though not as critical as your Cutteray, is your storage. More storage means fewer trips back to base, which is always nice during long mining runs. Here's a quick look at the storage capacity for each tier. The unique versions give a decent bump of about 250 volume more than the standard ones, except for tier 6, which jumps by an extra 500. But unlike the Cutteray, I wouldn't go out of your way to chase these. Even the regular storage modules are usually enough. The bigger variants occasionally drop from rare containers or small shipwrecks in the Hogga Basin. The Mark VI can show up in the deep desert, or from the Landsrat vehicle vendor if you got the right favor that week. And of course, there's always the player auction. Personally, I've been using a Mark V storage module with 2500 volume cap, and it seems to be working just fine, so I wouldn't stress too much about getting the absolute best one. As for the rest of the buggy, Mark III is absolutely fine. You can equip higher tier components like the Cutteray and storage module on a Mark III buggy with no issues. In fact, the one I'm using is my first buggy that I crafted early on. It's a Mark III across the board, aside from the upgraded Cutteray and storage. The only thing you might notice is that you may overheat occasionally, especially if you're using something like a Focus Mark VI Cutteray, which generates a bit more heat. You could upgrade the PSU, but honestly, it's a minor issue. I wouldn't stress about fully upgrading every part of your buggy. Focus on the Cutteray and storage, and you're good to go. Now that you have your skills and buggy set up, let's talk about actually farming aluminum. Aluminum nodes are mostly found in the eastern and western shield walls, but for this guide, I'm going to focus on the eastern shield wall. There are 3 main access points to the eastern shield wall if you're coming in with a buggy. You can either get up from the easternmost edge, from the south, or from a spot on the west. Personally, I prefer the eastern route near Pinnacle Station. It's straightforward and gets you up to a large flat plateau near the top that's packed with aluminum nodes. It's also super easy to navigate and mine quickly without getting stuck or wasting time. To make this even more efficient, you want to have a base as close as possible to this area. I have my main base set up right near the edge of the eastern shield wall, and honestly this whole zone is a solid pick for an endgame base location in general. But even if you don't have a main base here, you could always drop a temporary outpost nearby just to make farming and refining easier. The closer your base is, the less time you spend driving, and the faster your runs will be. Assuming you're using the same route I do, going up from Pinnacle Station, here's how to start the actual run. Drive up the hillside from the entrance near the station and mine any aluminum nodes you spot on the way. Once you get to the top, turn right and head into the wide open area I mentioned earlier. This is where you'll find most of the aluminum. It is worth noting that node locations shift slightly each week based on the Coriolis storm, but the general layout stays consistent. Just roam around the plateau and keep an eye out for clusters of nodes. Sometimes you'll find 2 or 3 right next to each other. Aluminum ore weighs 0.6 volume per unit, so with something like a Mark V buggy storage module holding 2500 volume, you can carry just under 4200 aluminum ore per run. You'll want to keep mining aluminum until you fill up your storage. It usually doesn't take long to max out your capacity, especially if you're using a higher tier Cutteray. Once your storage is full, make your way back to base to unload and start refining. With a Mark V storage, I can usually do a full run from start to finish in about 10 minutes. Using the Focus Mark VI, I can get that down to around 5 minutes per run with how much more efficient it is. Now that you've hauled back a full load of aluminum, it's time to start refining. You can do this at your main base or your temporary base if you're going that route, whichever is more convenient. To refine aluminum into ingots, you'll need at least a medium ore refinery. This setup refines at a cost of 6 ore per ingot and uses a decent chunk of water at 200 water per ingot. But honestly, the biggest bottleneck here isn't materials, it's the actual time it takes to refine. Each ingot takes 30 seconds to refine. So if you're coming back with around 4,000 ore, that'll give you roughly 700 ingots. But at 30 seconds per ingot, you're looking at over 5.5 hours of refining time just for one run. You can speed this up with a large ore refinery, which does improve efficiency in 2 ways. It drops the cost to 4 ore per ingot, and it reduces the refining time to 20 seconds per ingot. That said, large refineries are extremely expensive and require tier 6 materials. They also use up a lot more power. In most cases, it's actually just easier to build multiple medium ore refineries instead. They're cheaper to craft, use less power, and let you refine in multiple batches at the same time. And since you're gathering so much ore per run, the higher ore per ingot cost isn't a big deal. Now let's talk about water, which is also a big constraint. Each aluminum ingot takes 200 water to refine, and if you're making 700 to 1000 ingots per run or more, you're going to burn through a ton of water. Early on, you'll probably rely on deathstills or windtraps, but as you move into tier 5 and start farming duraluminum, which I'll show next, you'll want to start using advanced deathstills or large windtraps. If you're still in the aluminum tier, don't worry though. Just build a few basic deathstills to get started. Since this farm brings in so much aluminum, you'll have plenty of materials to craft more water structures. This then lets you refine even more aluminum. And if you're already into duraluminum or even tier 6, you'll be able to scale up with advanced deathstills or large windtraps and keep expanding the loop even further. Either way, once the aluminum farm is rolling, it definitely starts to compound on itself. Now that you're producing loads of aluminum, the next step is refining it into duraluminum. And for that, you'll need to farm jasmium and combine it with aluminum ingots at a refinery. Jasmium crystals are found in the tier 6 area of the map. This area is a radiation zone, so you'll need a radiation suit to safely farm in the area. Either a Mark IV or Mark V radiation suit will work, so go with whatever you can craft at that stage. You'll want to set up a temporary base near the edge of the radiation zone. If you didn't know, there are a few rocky outcrop areas along the outskirts that are radiation free, and those are the perfect spots to build. This lets you safely store materials, vehicles, and gear between runs and gives you a reliable base to operate from. You'll also need a buggy here too, either by breaking it down and transporting it with your ornithopter, or building a second one if you can afford it. Even just crafting a basic Mark III buggy is fine for this. Personally, I have 2 buggies, one at my main/aluminum base and one here. But since I only have one focused Mark VI Cutteray, I just remove it and swap it between buggies when I finish an aluminum run and head into the radiation zone. Your base here doesn't need to be fancy. Honestly, simpler is better. I just use a basic cube structure with a sub-beef, some storage, and room for my buggy or ornithopter. You can power it with standard generators and fuel cells nearby. To get into this area, you'll need at least a scout ornithopter, but if you have access to an assault ornithopter, this is a great time to use it. I usually bring all 3 vehicles when I farm in this area. My scout ornithopter stays in my vehicle backup tool. I then fly in using my assault ornithopter, and my spare buggy is parked at my temporary base. Once I land, I park my assault ornithopter, attach my Cutteray to the buggy, and head out to mine. The Scout Ornithopter is really helpful here if your radiation gets too high while you're mining. You can just leave your buggy parked on a safe outcrop, deploy the Scout, fly out of the radiation zone, and wait until your levels quickly drop. Once you're clear, just return, store your Ornithopter again, and keep mining. It works really well, and it means you likely don't even need iodine pills, which keeps the farm simple. So where are the best spots to farm Jasmium in this area? Jasmium nodes spawn in small pools on these rocky outcrops, in medium craters with 3 nodes, and these large craters with 6 nodes. It's these larger craters that you really want to target. When I start, I usually set a waypoint for this bigger crater, and on my way there, I usually hit any of the smaller 3-node craters I see nearby. Jasmium takes up 0.4 volume per ore, so with a Mark V storage, you're looking at about 6,250 ore per run. With this route, I'm usually able to fill up my inventory with Jasmium in around 5 to 10 minutes. The other great thing about the buggy is that you don't need to get out and risk standing in the green goo, which increases your radiation a lot faster, like when you're mining with the handheld Cutteray. The buggy lets you drive right up to the nodes, mine quickly, and avoid the radiation pools entirely. It also lets you skip the minigame and just yields more ores per node. Once your buggy is full, just head back to the temporary base. From there, you can offload the Jasmium into storage or transfer it into your Scout or Assault Ornithopter. You can then start shuttling it back to your main base or to your temporary aluminum base if you're still refining there. Finally, now that we have tons of aluminum ingots and a steady supply of Jasmium crystals, it's time to start refining everything into Duraluminum ingots. Just like aluminum, Duraluminum can be refined at either a medium or large ore refinery. If you're using a medium refinery, each Duraluminum costs 1 aluminum ingot and 4 Jasmium crystals. You'll also need 500 water per ingot. That 500 water cost is a big jump from aluminum refining, so by this point, you'll need to make sure you have a steady water supply. The good news here is that Duraluminum is exactly what you need to build advanced deathstills and large wind traps. So the more you refine, the more water production you can scale up. As you generate more Duraluminum, you can then farm more water, which in turn lets you refine even more. If you are using a large ore refinery, you'll save a bit of Jasmium since it only takes 3 crystals per ingot instead of 4, but you'll still need the same 1 ingot and 500 water. The nice thing about Duraluminum refining is that it's fast. With the medium refinery, each ingot takes 5 seconds to process. With the large refinery, it's even faster and only takes 4 seconds per ingot, so you won't be sitting around waiting hours like you do with aluminum. Just like aluminum though, it's probably not worth going out of your way to build a large refinery unless you already have one. Instead, your main focus should be on making sure there's no downtime in your refining process, since this is the largest bottleneck with how long it takes to process each ingot. Once this setup is up and running, you'll be able to farm all the aluminum, Duraluminum, and water you could ever need. If you found this video helpful, feel free to leave a like and let me know in the comments if there's anything you do differently when farming these resources. And if you want more guides like this, consider subscribing. Until next time, thanks for watching.